You're watching the CW11 News at 10.
An underground oil slick for years under homes and businesses in Brooklyn. People living nearby complain chemical vapors have burned their eyes and throats. Now they're pointing a finger at the world's largest oil company. That is the subject of tonight's Fact Finders Report, and here's Peter Thorne. Peter.
Katie, it's a poison creek surging with so much spilled oil. At points, the shoreline looks like a dirty bathtub because there's a ring around it from evaporated petroleum. And for years, that oil blob has also been oozing under people's homes.
When we began our research, we were staggered to find out that the largest oil spill in the country is right here in New York. It's twice as big as the Exxon Valdez spill, between 17 and 30 million gallons of oil. Despite that, we found very little print and broadcast media coverage of the issue. So we sort of set out to investigate what was going on, and where it seemed sort of a cut and dry issue of corporate negligence and indifference by the state and local governments. It turns out that the issue is considerably more complicated.
Historically, what happened was after the oil spill was basically discovered in 1978 by the Coast Guard. The oil spill actually happened in 1950. It was, and there's more of a story there, but it happened in 1950. It was actually rediscovered, quote unquote, by the Coast Guard when they were doing an aerial survey of the area, of the industrial area, to look for water pollution and other things. They saw a huge oil sheen on the creek, on the surface of the water, and they investigated and found out the history of the spill. They basically don't have direct authority to do anything, so they did nothing. And the state finally got involved to some degree in the 1980s, and there was a settlement agreement between the state and ExxonMobil in 1990 that was supposed to address the spill.
You know, Newtown Creek used to be a really thriving industrial area, lots of toxic work going on there, but essential services for the city, you know, like fuel storage, material staging, sewage treatment, power generation, waste transfer. As the manufacturing sector has really been squeezed out of the city, really just like the most toxic things remain.
It's honestly one of the worst sites in the country, and it's my predecessor actually, I think, had a quote in the paper saying, you know, this water body basically, it's as if the Clean Water Act was never passed. It's as if we never tried to address water pollution. This Newtown Creek looks the same as it did in 1968. It's really a mess. So
the pollution memory of the Newtown Creek is very strong. You know, the Industrial Revolution is pretty much like the sewer of the Industrial Revolution, you know.
While the industrial history of the creek and that it's created a major pollution problem in the water itself and in the surrounding lands, while that's beyond doubt, if and how it affects the local population is somewhat more obscure.
Oh yeah, there was a couple of oil spills, but they cleaned it up, you know. But
so I'm just curious, is it like a normal thing to have?
normal, yeah, but it was just one of those things that went over. There was an overflow.
we have residents that live in their houses above this plume of oil on the land side that have benzene vapors and other vapors basically from the oil spill coming up through their basements and into their homes. So you have a potential really big public health problem.
And have you ever been down to Newtown Creek and been by the water?
No, but sometimes that smell coming here.
Yeah, and and when it gets hot, does it smell like oil?
Yeah,
and stuff
everything.
Like that?
I used to have a landlord that's lived here for probably about 50 years, and he was the one that told me about it because he sometimes gets like oil in his backyard in the grass. It comes up on certain days, or you can smell it on certain days. It's really strong.
And it's very sad when the people that again, have lived there. You know, this historically Polish neighborhood, mixed, and also become more diverse. You know, a diverse ethnic neighborhood of recent immigrants. That, you know, when they do finally kind of find their political voice and organize and unify as a community, and they bring benefits into their community, then over time, the detriment to that, the downside to that is then it attracts other people to come into the community, because all of a sudden that's an interesting place to live. That's an artsy place to live. You know, it's just it's a really tough thing to address.
The thing about the neighborhood is that it's just amazing. You know, like, you know, we have Williamsburg right there, and the intellectual the intellectual pay for living here kind of outweighs the environmental problems right now. Anyway.
Does it outweigh the health risks?
It doesn't. If I was going to live here long term, I think then I would really consider it, because if I'm only going to be here for 2 more years, it's sort of hard to get me to care, you know. And I mean, I think that's the problem too, because I have that mindset, but you know, I'm temporary here. I'm just moving through it.
Like, so far in New York City, greening a neighborhood equals gentrifying it, and like so far, you know, like fixing up a waterfront means a linear esplanade with a railing. You know, we're talking about an industrial waterfront with lots of jobs where people work on the waterfront. And so how do you green it without, you know, losing all of that value?
It was only lately now that you're seeing people come in to the community asking about the pollution. But they said they tested the waters and everything else, but nobody knows.
If something's happening to me, like slowly, and I'm not aware of it, I definitely want to know about it. Yeah. And if a nonprofit have to step in and do that to make me aware of it and make me realize why I should care, even though I'm transient, definitely.
I would say you would have to probably send out literature to all the landlords, and if anything was to be done as far as testing, we should all be tested. No one wants to be the first to go out on a limb and be told something, and then you don't know whether it's truth. You don't know how much of this is political. You just don't know.
And there is pretty good community involvement. I mean, when the state of New York holds a public meeting to talk about the oil spill or talk about other pollution concerns there, you know, there are hundreds of people showing up at these meetings. They pack the hall. There are people spilling out the door. So there's, you know, when they need to, the community groups really get the word out.
While we learned that part of the problem with the creek is a lack of awareness, a major contributor to that particular part of the problem is that the creek is practically invisible, which is to say that there's only a handful of spots where it can be even seen, let alone accessed by the public, because it's sort of flanked by industrial zones on both sides for nearly its entire length. We found out that the Newtown Creek Alliance, an activist group, had done a lot of work towards creating a public access point.
One of the major kind of successes on the creek has been there's a new nature walk right by the sewage treatment plant.
Yeah.
And the story of that is that that's basically there as a result of an amazing group of community advocates working together with the DEP, and these people met with the DEP once a month for like a million years. And the result is this really interesting park where you can get up to the waterfront safely in an industrial area. You can check it out, and it's an amazing landscape, you know, like so, you know, people are up there working, and now you can get up there and check it out, you know, but we're not going to be swimming in Newtown Creek until major change comes.
Also, when you have what we've seen with a lot of cases we work on, when you have a situation in a community where there's a long-term environmental problem or long-term environmental pollution, the public that's aware of it, unless they're very, very devoted and involved and they stay passionate about it, it tends to wear people out. I mean, if they don't see a solution in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, after a while people, sadly enough, they'll, not everyone, but some people will they'll move, or they'll learn to live with it, or they'll just think that they're disempowered. They'll think that there's not much they can do about it, so they should just learn to live with it. And that's a tragedy. And I don't think you see that happening in Newtown Creek, but you're at a great point.
gotta dream really big, and you gotta be really ambitious, and you gotta like hold fast at, like, Clean Water Act says swimmable, fishable. You know, that's our law, right? And that's a law that we've been out of compliance since New York City has been not achieving that.
I mean, I think we can be optimistic about the future. The city is going to get more environmentally friendly, even with the high population. But it's always a challenge. There are always trade-offs, and it's always a challenge.